I forgot to make one announcement to welcome our guest, Bishop Graham, who is joining us today for all of the activities and making sure that it's all right with the synod. So, thank you for doing this. Well, about a month ago, I had some stuff I had to return to the mall. And I headed out with Mira, of course, I had to have Mira with me. And as we returned everything else, we decided we needed to stop by the Lego store. And about an hour later, I showed up back home. This. I couldn't resist. The Saturn V. This launched our first Americans to the moon, placed our first Skylab space station into orbit, and it remains the largest and most powerful rocket brought into operational status. Even Elon Musk's SpaceX cannot compete with this thing. Just watching the footage of this take off is incredible. Philosopher Jacob Needleman described this awe-inspiring moment when he was able to witness one of the final launches of the Saturn V. He spoke of this extraordinary light that emitted from the engines, and the slow, silent rise, and then the sound, and the violent vibration that, at this point, they'd had a few launches. We'd made it to the moon. People were getting a little tired of this thing. What are we even doing? He said that that moment, when that sound and the vibration came, it penetrated the core and it shook the cynicism off of everyone present. The history of our space program is amazing. The lofty visions and presidential challenges, marked with soaring achievements and soaring costs, as well as many terrible tragedies. Many of us could name at least one or two famous astronauts: John Glenn, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Tom Hanks, Jim Lovell. Maybe for maybe my generation, Sally Ride just flows up. These people that we know. There's something about space and the stars that can leave us breathless when we stop and look. It's fun to sit and get lost in the Lego building and reaching back into space and just becoming a child again, getting lost in those moments where all the worries of the world just can pass on by. We like to wander wistfully through these glories of the past, and sometimes we settle into those beautiful moments with some rose-tinted glasses. Because it wasn't until recently that many other accounts of those who helped launch the Mercury projects or the Saturn projects or into the future with the space shuttles, with the release of the book and the movies Hidden Figures, when many had never had the chance to hear the stories of Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson. Thanks again to Lego, the women of NASA, Mae Jemison and Nancy Grace Roman, Margaret Hamilton, all these stories coming to fruition. It's important to remember and engage this rich and diverse and complex and sometimes painful history to appreciate how it can shape us going forward, reminding us that it wasn't just a number of extraordinary and legendary men that sent these things into space, but countless scientists, engineers, mathematicians, both men and women, different skin colors, different nationalities helping to gather around this, and of course, a nation sending their support, investing in all of this together. There was an article I read, an interview with a woman who was speaking about hearing these stories from the Hidden Figures folks, hearing these stories of Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, how She'd never heard of it growing up, and how much loss she felt at not knowing that there was another story that could have helped her in her dreams. And as much as I love fascinating ideas and days of the glory years of NASA, we could not and we should not recreate it. It was born out of the Cold War. It had a blank check. They were just spending like crazy. It was a time when the cultural norms placed the burden of sexism and racism directly on the shoulders of those on the receiving end. But more important, all of this is to remember the collective commitment that it took, the investment in science and technology, the possibilities and the awe-inspiring things that we can accomplish, not just up in the heavens, but on this planet that we call home. The light, the awe-inspiring motion, maybe even a little bit of terror and curiosity floating around. It's easy to see why these disciples today in our story were ready to hunker down and preserve this moment on the mountaintop, to remain away from it all. God's glory and all its dazzling light, an affirmation of the prophets of old. At this point in Mark's Gospel, they have witnessed Jesus doing some amazing things. Healing the sick, casting out demons, opening the eyes of the blind with just a little bit of mud, raising the dead, feeding multitudes. But he's also been stirring up some controversy. He started to speak about death, and the cross, about losing one's life. And now this seems like a good place to stay right about now. It's good for us to be here, Peter says. He couldn't resist. Forget about the rest of the disciples down there. Forget about everyone else waiting at the bottom of the mountain. We are all set here. Down there is only risk, problems, crowds. That extraordinary light caught their attention. Peter tried to break the silence with talk of setting up camp. But then came the sound of God's voice penetrating his fear. This is my son. Listen to him. Listen, it is time to follow Jesus back down the mountain and continue on to Jerusalem and beyond. It is good for us to be here. It is good to remember why we are gathered together on this journey. The church has built extraordinary houses of worship. And at one time was the only show in town on a Sunday morning. Many times, faithful people have been caught silent, wondering what to say as the world around us turns in fear, maybe worried about what we could say, how we could preserve the church, how we could preserve ourselves, and only left struggling to speak boldly to the face of injustice or trying to justify ourselves in the aftermath of an incident or scandal. And then the rumbling of the gospel seeks to shake us free. Listen, comes a voice from the heavens. The church should not be defined by a glorious moment in the past, when the pews were full, or preserve old societal norms for the sake of tradition. But the church should be defined on the powerful work of the Spirit working through the margins, transforming lives through the awe-inspiring light of Christ, shared through relational and communal means. It is good for us to be here. It feels especially good for me to be here. It's been a fairly interesting journey these past 4 years, and a little longer for all of you. When I first got into this situation, we'll call it a situation, I didn't know what was going on over here. I was talking to people way on the other side of the county, always wondering, do any of you know about me? I don't know. I was constantly worried, what is going to happen? I don't even know if I like any of you. And hopefully, I don't know if you'll like me. But when I first got settled in, got connected with Pastor Matt, and things got out of control over here, I saw a magnet on the fridge in the kitchen with 3 words: faith, love, and service. Use it around. I thought they were simple yet effective ways of reminding us how this community makes a difference, as well as a challenge to inspire us to listen and to remember that the Spirit is not done shaking off the old and renewing us again and again, walking with us through our neighborhood, raising our voices to proclaim and to sing a message of hope, and finding the strength to stand up for changes that may be needed so that God's love may be known to all. In January, marked 3 years since this congregation entered into a period of intentional discussion about what it means to be welcomed and transformed by our faith, and by those who come through our doors, and those who are outside and may never arrive in our pews. We discussed, we conversed, we celebrated, because eventually we voted to become a Reconciling Christ congregation. A conversation shaped by joys and pains of the past, and what bore the fruit of the seeds that had been planted at various points along Epiphany's story. We affirmed our call to minister to all people in our world, knowing that the world is often a harsh and unloving place, a place of alienation and brokenness. We affirm that it is Christ who calls us into reconciliation and wholeness, and we continue to be challenged by the gospel to be agents of healing within our society and to be active witnesses to God's presence in the world. It's an affirmation that our Christian faith is not a retreat from reality, but one that just can't resist from being immersed in it. And I have been blessed on this journey with you so far. It is good for us to be here, as we once again look ahead into the future, not knowing what we may encounter, but doing so with the affirmation of our past and the courage to hope for what's ahead. It is good to be in this place, not to maintain a house of worship and take care of the occasional leaks from the roof or replacing furnaces every once in a while, but to be church, a people gathered together in Christ's name to celebrate and discern the divine, things like the Transfiguration, to take in the view from the mountaintop, to look towards the ever-expanding universe in wonder, but most importantly, to walk together in the vulnerable and beautiful work of God in the world. Amen.